Hello and welcome to another episode, and welcome to our Tesla Model S 75. Now, we're not going to be doing a review today. The car's featured in lots of our videos and people have seen pretty much all over it, and there's a lot of information out there about Teslas on the internet. However, what we do want to talk about is how it's been for us in living with it for 2.5, nearly 3 years and covering 40,000 plus miles. So that's what we're going to be doing. Some people often refer to Tesla as a tech company that makes cars, but one thing is true, they're definitely not mainstream. That can be a good thing if you need some software writing at very short notice to prevent your customers' cars being stolen, as seen here. All good stuff. So if they're not an actual car manufacturer, how does the rest of the car hold up? Well, actually, surprisingly well. The interior is showing hardly any signs of wear in the front, and even with this little monkey jumping around in the back for the best part of a year, it's still pretty much as it left the factory. So for somebody like me, who's actually only 5'10" and not particularly tall, but I have got a very long back and neck, headroom is a struggle. I really have to crouch down here and arch my bum forward to get a position where my head's not rubbing against the roof. Now, this was only a problem with the vehicles with a non-panoramic roof, which this one is. Obviously, the acceleration is amazing. This is 3.7 brake horsepower, actually comes in at near a 400 when we tested it. And the 0 to 60 of 5.5 comes in at 5.2, so it's very, very, very fast. The range, that's often a bit of a sad point for a lot of EV owners, but not for us in this model.
We've had our Tesla a little while now, but I can still remember the day when James decided that he wanted to try and convince me that this was the right car for us. And I have to say, I did take some convincing, and for a number of reasons. I was used to our Leaf. I loved our Leaf. I liked the size of it. And I liked it. It wasn't overly expensive. So I was a bit nervous, and I think my initial concerns were the cost of the Tesla. You know, they're a lot more than a normal car. They're a lot more than a lot of cars on the market that we would have perhaps considered. So I did take some convincing. So we got the car, and I have to say, I loved it almost immediately.
Now, you may have seen then when I was doing the acceleration test that on the screen it says driver assistance features unavailable. It's a bit frustrating sometimes, but for the most part we're not using autopilot. Now, if I was on the motorway, that would be an issue because I use autopilot everywhere. Kate not so much, but me definitely. So I don't know if that's been ironed out for autopilot 2, but for autopilot 1 it's quite a frequent occurrence. I'm really struggling to find things with a car that are bad, which I suppose is a good thing, but you might remember this. That noise was the airbox, and on the front there are 2 louvers which direct the airflow either across a condenser, which are the air conditioning condensers, or the radiators. And apparently it was a little bit too big for the airbox, so when the servo pushed it around it squeaked against the inside of the airbox. Being an airbox, it resonated the noise. There was no safety implications there was nothing wrong with it as such in terms of anything that was dangerous, but in terms of an annoying noise, and God, it was horrific. It sounded really bad. It was bad, but it was sorted very, very quickly, which I was quite pleased about. The service that I got from Tesla was awesome. What else? Handbrake calipers. So this was a recall, didn't know anything about it. They quite simply, they wrote to us and said, there's a recall for your... No, they didn't. They sent us an email because they don't write to us. About 3 weeks later, they arranged for somebody to come and pick the car up and drop us off a Model X 100D, which was very, very nice, I've got to say. They kept the car for a day, they brought it back and it was done. Paperwork was in the car. That was that. So, handbrake calipers, noisy airbox, no door handles, they've been fine. I know a lot of people have had problems with door handles, no door seals.
There was a couple of things for me which made me a bit nervous about the car, and they were the length and the width. Now again, we'd come from a Leaf, so not an overly big car. I'm not the most confident of parkers, and I looked at the Tesla and just thought, I'm never ever in a million years going to get used to it. But I have, and I can drive now down country lanes and I can gauge the widths and I can pass other cars without really thinking about it. It is a big car though, and probably not really made for our small country British roads, but it's manageable once you're used to it. And the length, I think because of the cameras, I'm able to park this car really easily. And I'd never ever in a million years have thought that I could park a car better in reverse than I can forwards, but with this I can. Putting it in forwards, I always end up on a slant or too close or too far away, but backwards I generally get it pretty spot on.
Now and again we'd get a strange vibration at a certain speed and it would come in and out, and there was no real sort of time for it. It wasn't really easy to pin down, it was so sporadic. And we phoned Tesla and they said, okay, bring it in. We took it in, and bizarrely it turned out to be a rubber strip, and what that was allowing was the air that goes through the front bumper to go under the radiator instead of through it, and it was causing the undershield to vibrate against the car apparently, and they fixed that. So what's that? Handbrake recall, no, I can't count that. Louvers, so we've had 2 faults so far, which have been, well, the car's been off the road then, I'll say. No, I think the handbrake as well, because that was off the road for that, even though it was a recall. So 3 faults that's had the car off the road. Each one of them faults amounted to 1 day, so 3 days off the road. So that's not bad.
There's a few other things I do really like, and they may sound a bit silly really to some people, but since having Florence I've perhaps become a bit more practical. So getting stuff in and out of the boot, so easy. It's such a big boot. I can chuck a pushchair in there, I can chuck so much stuff in there on top of the pushchair. I know I can go away for a weekend with all of Florence's stuff, and trust me, that's a lot, plus mine and James's, and it just fits in so easily. It's not a problem, and it'll be something that whatever car we get next, that will be important to me, to make sure that we've got that again. Also the getting Florence in and out, very, very important, because I do it so many times a day, and the Tesla actually isn't the greatest for that. I have got a bit of a bad back, and I do wonder whether it's because I'm getting Florence in and out of the car so often, and I have to twist to get her in underneath the roof of the car. It's not ideal, probably not the best car for small children. Obviously she's going to get bigger and that's going to get easier because she'll be getting herself in and out of a car seat, but right at this precise moment, not brilliant.
A friend of mine who I was desperately trying to get into a Tesla, he couldn't afford it, so he went to Mercedes and got a C220 diesel, a second-hand one. It's got 15,000 miles on it. He collected it 6 weeks ago. He's been in a courtesy car while they've been trying to fix a fault for 5 of those 6 weeks. So it's quite interesting. People always sort of diss Tesla for their reliability and their build quality, and yeah, there are some issues there, but them issues aren't just Tesla's. Other manufacturers have them issues.
I'm quite a cold person. I think it's fairly well known, and I like to be warm. So one thing I hate is getting into a cold car, and the best thing about the Tesla is I can just press a button on the app, and by the time I've got into the car, it's defrosted. I've got a nice warm seat. Me and Florence are both nice and warm. It's perfect. So we hop in our car while all our neighbours are still de-icing, and that's quite a nice feeling, I've got to say. I would miss that if I didn't have it on our future car. Definitely, definitely, definitely.
Let's talk about the battery. So there is something called Scan My Tesla, which you need a certain lead which plugs in just into the cubby hole under here, and you need a suitable cam reader, and then you're able to access the network and find out what's going on with different things, temperatures and motors, coolant temperatures, all that sort of business. Now, this car started off as a 60 kilowatt hour version, and it was like that for financial reasons. It was just too expensive to buy a 75 at the time, and it was a 5,000 upgrade to take that extra 15 kilowatt hours. So no chance that was happening. But then Tesla dropped it and brought the price down to from 5,000 to 900, I think. It might have been less than that. And I thought, actually, that sounds like a bargain. We'll have that, because that's going to give us an extra 15 kilowatt hours. Now, I knew it wasn't a true 15 kilowatt hours, but I knew it would give us some extra. But we were able to get a realistic, reliable 200 miles out of our car as a 60 at 70 miles an hour in all conditions. You know, the car was fantastic. Part of the reason for that was the 60 kilowatt hour version gives a usable 62.5 kilowatt hours, and the car's just quite efficient when you're at 70 miles an hour. Tesla's really come into their own. The Model S does, anyway, really comes into its own at higher speeds. We upgraded it, and that took us to what we thought would be as close to 75 kilowatt hours as you could get. However, the usable amount on a 75 is 72.5. So already you've got 2.5 kilowatt hours that you're missing there, which we gained for free as a 60, because our 60 gave us 62.5, which was a bit frustrating. So we gained 10 kilowatt hours instead of 15. The range increase was about 25 miles. So 225 miles we can get out of this. If you drive it at 70, you can't really be going over 70, but if you drive it at 70, it will do that. However, I think that was a mistake. I do. I think I jumped at it a little bit quick, and probably, given the choice, I would knock this back to a 60 and have my money back. But obviously I know that can't happen. But that's just one of those. You can't win them all.
The other thing that I prefer to a lot of the other electric cars I've driven is the charging network. The charging network for Tesla it's fantastic, and it's just getting better and better and better. And that was particularly obvious when we were driving through France. There were chargers everywhere. It was just such an easy journey, and probably easier than getting from here to Strathy, if I'm honest. I mean, that's improved now. The charging network is a lot better, so getting to Strathy is so easy. But it's just convenient, it's quick. You can generally always get onto a charger without having to queue. That's really, really nice. Everybody talks about the speed of Teslas, and I think that's one thing people are always quite impressed by, and they always ask what the 0 to 60 time is, and when you take somebody in the car they want you to floor it so they can feel the G-force. And yes, that is impressive. It's really amazing. You know, the first time I drove this car it scared me, and then I drove a P90D and a P100D, and that scared the life out of me too much, and actually I just wanted our car back. They're very, very quick, as are all electric cars, but particularly the Teslas. But the thing for me about driving our Tesla is it's such a relaxing drive. You feel completely chilled, and you don't really want to drive that fast because you're just enjoying driving and not having to change gear for a start, because it's an electric car. But it's smooth, it's comfortable, and it's not a stressful experience. I mean, James loves the autopilot, and I think I've probably said it a few times in the past in other videos. I'm not the biggest fan of autopilot because it does make me nervous. I like to feel in control, but on long journeys on motorways, it can be useful. The adaptive cruise, absolutely love the adaptive cruise, especially when you're stuck in traffic on, I don't know, the M6 or something for 3 hours, and all you want to do is get somewhere. That is really useful. It doesn't make you aggressive because it's fast. I think it does the opposite. It makes you more chilled. You know you've got the ability to get round something or overtake something and just have the speed if you need it, but it's not something I use a lot. But again, I would probably miss that. If we changed our car to a slower car, perhaps I would still miss that.
Compared to all the other EVs, this one it's just got that something that the others miss. Now I've got to be very careful because the thing it has got is a price tag, and it was huge. It was a massive price tag and a massive stretch for us. Just to give an example, I could have bought 15 Renault Zoes at the price we paid for ours for the price of this. That's just simply outrageous. When is a car ever worth 15 times what another car is? It's just insane. But this one somehow is. It just manages it. It performs well, it drives well, the supercharger network, autopilot, it just gives you that edge. And that just makes it worth it. For me anyway. You don't meet many unhappy Tesla owners, I can tell you that. I'll just pull out of this junction. It's just this feel that I like. Let's give it a little bit of acceleration. Oh, that's lovely. You can't beat that. That's worth the price tag.
I've always loved the way it looks, to be honest. When James showed me pictures of it, when he was trying to convince me to say yes, that we could have one, I loved how it looks. It's a really nice car. And when we picked it up, when you see it sort of in the flesh, so to speak, it's solid and beautiful, and I really, really like it. And a lot of people like it. I mean, I get comments on it when I pull into car parks. People will come up to me and say that's a really lovely looking car, and I always feel quite proud that it's our car. I'll be driving around the streets of anywhere, you know, and people will be pointing at it, and a lot of children actually now are recognising Tesla. I don't know what it's from. I think somebody mentioned it was a game, I don't know, but you'll have people stop and look at it or point at it, and you'll see them mouthing, that's a Tesla. And it might sound a bit ridiculous, but it's quite a nice feeling to think, yes it is, and it's mine. And yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm proud to drive it. Sometimes I forget that I'm driving it, and I see people stopping and looking or pointing and making comments, and I'm thinking, why are they pointing at me? It's a 3-year-old car now, and it still turns heads, and I think it will continue to turn heads for quite some time. I really like the Model 3, but for me it doesn't have that same instant appeal that the Model S does. It's still nice, but it just doesn't have the elegance. I think that's the word with the Model S, it's elegant.
What would I have changed? You saw me sat in the back. I can't sit up in the back, which is bad. I've got a really long back and neck, and it does make sitting in the back not great. And I had to sit in the back between Beth, Lily and Kate on the way to a Zappy event, and I can tell you it wasn't the most comfortable for me having such a long neck. So yes, I would have had a panoramic roof because that cuts out the roof lining, and it would have been okay for my height. The air suspension is better than the coil springs, but the coil springs aren't actually that bad. It's quite a comfortable ride, although they maintain some good firmness, which is nice.
One of the things I didn't like when we first picked the car up, and it took a little while really for me to get used to, was the infotainment system, this huge screen that we have here. And I found it a little bit too much, and there's still times when I can't use certain functions, like I don't have the reversing camera on when I'm driving because I find it too distracting, especially if it's taking up half the screen. It's a big part of your vision, even when you're not looking at it, and when you can see things moving I found that quite distracting. But I just didn't like the overall size of it in general to start with, but now I do. And I know in the Model 3 they've got a much smaller screen, and I think I would miss this. I find it really odd to say, because at the very beginning I was like, no, it's too much, it's too big, it's too in your face, but it's fantastic. And the way it works, okay, sometimes there's little glitches, and especially with Spotify, that drives me mad sometimes when you just want to play something. When Florence is screaming for Wheels on the bus and I can't get Wheels on the bus to come up because Spotify's having a moment. But apart from that, it really is brilliant.
I'm definitely going to miss this car. Definitely.
Overall, I can't deny that I love this car. I'm really, really, really going to miss it. And for a lot of reasons, you know, for all the reasons I've just listed, but it's got some good memories, this car. We've driven to Switzerland in it, we've driven up to Strathy in it, we brought Florence home in it from the hospital, and it's going to be a really sad day when it goes, and I won't be ashamed to say that I probably will have a little bit of a tear to say goodbye to it. And I just hope it goes to somebody who loves it as much as we have. It'll be missed, massively missed.